Good morning, everyone. I'm Steele Marcoux. I'm the editor of Veranda Magazine, and I am so thrilled to have you here with us as we kick off Discover ADAC. We have a great conversation planned this morning about designing spaces that are rooted in tradition, yet redefined for modern life, with two true masters of design and two great friends of mine, Alessandra Branca and Tony Barata. Before I introduce them, however, I'd like to take a moment to thank our host, ADAC, and our sponsor, Jim Thompson Fabrics. As the world's largest producer of hand-woven fabrics, Jim Thompson is especially known for its legendary tie silks. This short video gives a glimpse into the history of Jim Thompson. Please take a moment to enjoy before I bring on our esteemed panelists.
Tie silk as we know it isn't something new, isn't a new product or new invention by Jim Thompson. It's already existed for centuries. Our forefathers have woven tie silk and dyed tie silk from natural fibers, materials that were available at hand. It wasn't until after the war when Jim Thompson came back to Thailand, when he worked with a small community of weavers and had brought over synthetic dyes from Europe. It was the combination of these vastly superior dyes that could produce bright colors, along with the sheen and the iridescence of the natural raw material of Thai silk that had produced an explosion of colors, something that the world had never seen before.
I'd like to welcome our two amazing panelists this morning. First, I'm going to share my screen and then introduce Tony and Alessandra. Oh no, hold on. Okay, first up, Tony Barata. He's one of the most well-known American designers in the profession, known for his bold use of color and scale that honors tradition and defies predictability. He's also known for his brilliant collaborations, including with longtime business partner Bill Diamond, as well as so many great manufacturers in the industry like Stark Carpet, Thomasville Furniture, Colonial Williamsburg, Capel Rugs, just to name a few. He's also the author of two beautiful books, including Decorate Happy, which was released earlier this year. Please join me in welcoming Tony Barata. Our next panelist today is Alessandra Branca, a renowned Chicago-based designer who believes living well involves comfort, elegance, and a touch of the whimsical. Honestly, I couldn't have written a better mission statement for Veranda myself. She was born and raised in Rome, and her love of classical beauty still informs her work today. She has recently launched Casa Branca, a collection of prints, wallpapers, table and bed linens, accessories, and more. And I've got a few items in my cart that I plan on purchasing later today when we get finished. It's such a good collection.
Thank you.
So today we're going to be talking about how each designer's understanding of history and tradition influences their work today through the lens of 4 different themes. I've asked each designer to share a few examples of their work as they relate to these themes, and we're going to start with color. See if I can get my slides to work here. So to each panelist, where do you find your color inspiration, and how would you characterize your approach to color? And Tony, we're going to start with you.
Good morning, everybody, and thanks for coming today. Where do I start with color? It's a good question. I've been doing this a long time, so it's kind of instinctual now. But certain things inspire me. I like to look at paintings a lot, contemporary artists and impressionists. I'm really turned on by how color is used in art.
I love that.
Yeah, it's I think it's an easy thing for people to start a room by picking out their famous painting. I mean, I look at Matisse for color schemes all the time, you know, and
Amazing.
you know, a lot of what I do is based on kind of like the study of I was an art history major in college, so you know it's very natural for me to look at art. That's where I get a lot of inspiration from.
What's happening in this room that we're looking at here? I mean, I see that incredible sculpture.
Um, what's interesting about this room is that each time over the years we're always like changing the palettes around slightly. I don't really think that great or it's necessary to reinvent the wheel um, with my color palette. And basically, you know, it's a lot of times it's based on classic coloration. So, you know, red, blue, turquoise, and there's some like a burnt orange in here.
I
So
love that orange.
it's a pretty color, and it's not something that we use all the time. But I think that the goal with my interiors is sort of just to make things playful, and especially the palette, you know. And I think the one thing that I kind of stress when we're doing a house is like you have to keep a consistency throughout the house. Otherwise, it's sort of
Mm,
all over the place. And
right.
you want to go from room to room, and I'm sure Alessandra agrees. You want to room to room. You want to have that sense of the overall. You know, you're not trying to go from a purple room to a lime green room. It never works.
No.
So that's what we're working with in terms of the control of this room.
So you have kind of a thread that goes throughout. Oh my gosh, this is amazing. This makes me talk about decorating happy. I love it.
I have to tell you, I've done this. I did this apartment for two friends of mine, and you know, it's a challenge always when you're limited by a palette. You know, these clients like blue and pink, and you know that's pretty evident here. And again, it sort of stretches to each room of the apartment.
Amazing. You can see the art influence here for sure.
Yeah, I mean, this is for a ski house in Vermont, and it was a tricky house because it was on all of these crazy different levels. It was actually two condos combined into one
I love it.
house. It was not the easiest project to work on, but again, we're sort of looking at geometrics in a colorful way. I mean, I think that um, again, the theme of the color is shown primarily in this room, but we go into other colors like a plum color and a
Mm.
chocolate brown and a more and an olive green. So we add layers through different colors.
And there's such a heavy influence here, even though the first thing you notice is the blues and the reds, but the kind of grays and cool neutrals, I think,
Yes.
work hard here.
Yeah, I've been doing that a lot in these my later work. I get a lot of neutrals with the grays and beiges within the palette, just to sort of like you know, as the sherbet in the in the full meal. So I think that I think that you'll see that in more of my later work. So not this one.
Not this one. This is amazing. This is
Thank you. This is my apartment in Florida, and you know, it's all about a coloration that I had never lived with before. Usually in Miami, there's a lot of turquoise used, obviously. So my prior apartment to this was actually done with turquoise. So I wanted to change that up. And therefore, this palette was used. And I actually had bought the art after the room was done, and it's
It's
a piece
perfect.
by this one. It's pretty good, and it's by an artist by the name of Seal Floyer, who actually takes a colored marker, sticks it on the middle of a piece of paper, and lets the ink flow out.
Oh my goodness.
So let me tell you, she does pretty well with a box of pens. I was going to start this by myself. Anyway,
I love it. Do you
how I
find
work.
when it comes to, oh, I'm going to ask you one more question before turning to Alessandra, but when it comes to working with clients art, do you, are you buying art after you've created the room, or are you starting with the art, or is it sort of a mix of both?
Well, it's sort of, sometimes it's we work with the client's existing art. Mostly we're starting a collection with the client.
I see.
And I think that uh, any decorator will attest to this. You know, when people give you art to start a room, it could either make it or break it. You
Yeah.
know, this is like the biggest problem with design. You can do an absolutely gorgeous room, and then a client will come up with a piece of art, and you're like, why didn't you show me this at the beginning? You know,
Right.
it's like, and then I could have told you use it somewhere else.
For
So
sure.
it can be problematic, but it's more, you know, it's pretty common for us to work the other way around, where you're buying art with the room in mind.
And you're helping that client
Yeah,
actually
you know
build
what?
the
You don't
color.
want it to be too mitchy matchy. You don't
Right.
want it to be. It's such a tricky situation. Art is always difficult. Also, the one problem with it is after you spent all this money on the decorating, you either have a client that's like so tired of spending money that the wall remains empty, or they buy the most expensive piece of art that imaginable, and you're like, why was I on a budget like this when you bought a $3 million painting, you know? So that's typical.
Complaining about that sofa. That's, oh gosh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, now we're going to turn to Alessandra to hear about how she builds her color palettes. And Alessandra, it warms my heart that you are starting off with this slide. I absolutely love this room.
Well, it's my influence. I would say Nancy Lancaster is the doyenne of color and comfort and everything chic.
This is her Butta Yella.
Yellow.
I can't do it justice, but her drawing room.
It was wonderful. What an amazing room. I got to see it before it got converted.
I did too, and I'm really grateful for that. Okay, let's see. Your next slide. Oh, this is a beautiful room.
Very different.
Very different. Talk to us about how you built the color palette for this space.
The client built the color palette. This client loves these roses and mauves, and it's very interesting. I don't typically think of these as colors I go to immediately, but I ended up absolutely loving them. We had done that pair of Gustavian chairs had been in another room that we'd done before. So we brought those to this room. And then I found a pair of Empire curtain rods, which I had mounted in glass as standing lamps to have the old and new. And I did, as Anthony mentioned, this sort of neutral background, because I think there's something about the yin and yang of having color against something neutral,
Mm.
or bringing in black into a room with a lot of color. It sort of stabilizes it. It's something, or white with color. There's always that underlying something that sort of pulls it forward. And in this case, we did a very neutral rug, an incredible sort of cashmere mohair sofa, and then all the textiles. It was all about the textiles. The Fortuny, which was fantastic. And the lampshades we did out of antique textiles, which I really enjoyed working with. So it was really, it is a wonderful room. The client lives in this room, which is such a huge, compliment to me, is that this is actually a lived-in room.
It's so sophisticated. Those lamps are unforgettable.
Fun. And the
Lamps are
Damien
cool.
Hirst kind of cool too. And by the way, the Damien Hirst, when you talk about art and the order in which things happen, I
Yes.
agree with Tony. Sometimes the art comes first, sometimes it comes later. In this case, it came right in the middle. She had already established the sort of colors that she wanted. We had already started to work with look and feels. And then I was in London and found this piece and said, it's perfect. But we were already on our way. So this was the marriage. And I loved the symbolism, obviously, of the butterflies. And I liked the combination of the Louis XV and this mandala type artwork, which is and it's a round form. There's also something in design, which is not just color, but it's color and form. And if you noticed in Tony's work, you talked about the stripes, you talked about the lines of squares. Well, here it's about squares and rounds. You really start to see the patterns, the mix of something organic and something graphic.
I love the organic from the art against the graphic sort of wall treatment. What's happening on the walls?
The wall is actually running bond, and it is actually paper that was installed within a 1/4 inch. And it's basically a, what do you call it? Parchment.
Amazing.
And installed it. You can only imagine.
Beautiful.
Recently, she mentioned changing. I said, no, you're not changing.
It's
absolutely that.
Incredible.
Yeah.
The color here is so breathtaking. I feel like we don't see this green enough.
Well, this green is called poison green. I learned where the meaning came from in the 18th century when they had apothecaries, 18th and 19th centuries. Anything that was poisonous, because people were not often literate who worked in the apothecaries, anything poisonous was put in a green glass bottle, which was a specific color of green.
Wow.
Called poison green.
Wow.
This is an 18th century house in Georgetown. It's a very famous, wonderful old house. And the clients had small children, and we walked into this beautiful, very serious space, but it was not the home for children, little children. And so we decided to have fun with it. And we ebonized the floors and left them bare. And then we did a glaze on the wall, which I believe, I'm not exaggerating, the person who did the glaze actually quit numerous times.
Oh no.
It was a very difficult process because achieving this color is 2 to 3 different colors of green juxtaposed to each other.
Wow.
And then we have the Jonas wood over the fireplace. It's kind of he's a great American artist I love. Mixed in with the 18th century, here you see the black and how it grounds the room. And you have this green and pops of coral and black and white. And it's the graphic colors with organic patterns. It's all these plays. It's a balance. Design is like music. It really is. There's a running theme, and then every so often you have something to counter that. And it's just like that. I compare it to music or cooking.
Interesting.
You have the base, and then every so often, Italian food, we have the spice.
I love it. The black here is so important because it really, really helps this color, remain sophisticated.
it really helped. The client had actually a really wonderful collection of black and white photography, which is on the wall to the left as you're looking at this.
Hmm.
And that sort of drove the black and white. And then we thought we'd bring some color and some spring. Basically, it's springtime all the time.
I love that. What could be better? Oh, this is such a soothing space.
This room is another residence that was a 19th century townhouse, and it had a double living room. And we did this wonderful wall with the 1930s hand painted. We commissioned the paper based on a 1930s pattern, chinoiserie pattern. And the color, again, the color scheme, you have the cool with the warm, very much, you know, and you have the taupe with the coral with this amazing sunny yellow that is just incredible. And the house faced north. And that was another thing I was going to say, is that colors are very influenced by which way they face.
Interesting.
So you can do cool colors on a south elevation and warm colors on a north elevation. I tend to feel like colors also reflect what's outside.
I'm writing that
Homes
down.
and homes are very influenced. So houses in the countryside or in the suburbs where you have green will influence the inside. And then conversely, if you're in an apartment, or in this case, a townhouse, you're going to be influenced by the colors of structures around you.
Of course. I love how the various colors that you worked with here are repeated around the room in different places. It kind of carries the eye.
It is good. And then the other thing that's very cool is to do an unlined taffeta. In this case, we did the sunny yellow, butter yellow.
Butter
and,
yellow.
Did it unlined, so the light really reflects through that and makes it very, very chic. It's also a way to take, the client had some things that were very traditional, very classical, beautiful furniture, and update it in some ways and make it a little younger. So we designed the sofa and did some things, but they're sort of plays on traditional, but not traditional.
I love it. Oop. Okay, so now we're going to talk about sort of a melting pot of influences. This is an idea that that I'm particularly interested in because we largely at Veranda focus on American design, and it seems particularly appealing to Americans to want to decorate with antiques and art from, you know, lots of different time periods and places of origin. So I'd love to ask each panelist, how do you blend these influences so artfully and successfully? And how does architecture or setting, as Alessandra, you were just speaking to, kind of influence how you do that? Alessandra, we're going to start with you this time.
Well, you know, Nancy Lancaster was my main influence for that, because it was the idea you have the freedom as Americans. Europeans are bound by their cultures. They're bound by their countries, their cultures, their architecture. Everything is one and the same. While in America, you can create your culture, you can bring it together, and you're free. And that's what made her work so successful. She went from Virginia, where there was this English tradition, but it was freed up because it was American. And then she brought it back to England and really taught the Brits how to be looser and mix Italian with French with English. And in this room is sort of a mix. Talk about a mix of cultures. We have English, a wonderful Gainsborough portrait chair on the left, which I slip covered because I thought it would, to take this incredible museum quality chair and slip cover it is very relaxed. We have the chinoiserie, the Japan screen that's 18th century and wonderful. The antique, I took antique paisley that were old pieces from various paisleys, and we created the lampshades on these wonderful, Japan, white porcelain lamps, just sort of Japan-like lamps. And then we did a mid-century sofa mixed with the braconnier panel that is made into a sort of a sofa blanket. And then obviously, and then the tartan. I mean, talk about mix of everything. It's everything in this room. French on the right. And the truth is, in the end, it's really just all about mixing it up, making it comfortable, and being at ease with that. I don't think you can contrive this.
Right.
That's where it's hard. It's not an easy thing to do. But I think if they are things that you love and you really think of color and pattern, it's just like food. You can't mix Chinese with Italian. It doesn't work. But you can mix Chinese with Thai. You can start to have Vietnamese influences, and French and Vietnamese have been taught. You just have to know what you're doing. And in this case, I think it's really a question of thinking of the organic against, and this is the easiest way to explain it, a graphic pattern against an organic pattern, and a
Yeah.
graphic form against an organic form. And that's where you get the curvy leg can be next to the Louis XVI leg.
I love it.
And then the coffee table is Janssen.
And the stripes next to the screen even, I mean, it just kind of, it grounds it.
And the walls were upholstered in a ticking, a very light linen ticking.
Absolutely beautiful.
It's fun, very comfortable. Oh my God, one of my favorite rooms. This is a room I did for a client who is really amazing collector of English furniture. And she was in her 70s when we did this room. So it really shows you that it doesn't matter what age you are, you can have the freedom to go in and have fun and mix the elements of her past, you know, this wonderful English, the room was much bigger than this, and this is just a corner of it. But what this corner did is the rug had come from her parents, and it was the only thing that she had thought of getting rid of it. And I said, no, no, no. We literally found it in her basement. And
Oh my goodness.
I'm taking that rug. And the rug drove the room, which is really typical. The millwork existed. It's a 1920s house. And we left it. I loved it. And we painted the inside in this blue, sort of blue antique turquoisey, and did a big banquette. Wonderful little 19th century empire wine tables that ended up being her coffee table. I mean, it was really interesting. She bought into all of the ideas of mixing all of these elements in the motherwells, which I thought was really kind of cool.
Oh, absolutely.
And then again, the unlined taffeta window treatments, which really give, your eye goes right to those panels that are gray, turquoise, and fuchsia.
They're stunning. I love the unlined.
And that painting.
That painting is amazing.
Yeah. The color somehow is a little dimmer than it should be, but it is my living room in Rome, which is a mix of things. So my living room in Rome is on top of a 15th century palazzo, but the family who owned the top floor had built a duplex, a modern duplex in the 30s. So it is a modern space in a very old building in one of the oldest neighborhoods in Rome. So we don't have all the details that one would expect from a home in Rome.
Sure.
It's a very, very large living room. We have, it's probably 25 by 40. It's very big, but we live in it. We have a table where we work. We have a table where we eat. We hang out in this room, and it's a mix of all the things that I'd had that I could transport. That was another trick. I did not want to paint the whole room in a color, so what I did is just that one square on the back wall, which I thought was such a great way to bring color to a room without having to have the whole room be that color.
That's really, really clever.
And obviously old and new, and
it almost, the red almost works as a frame or a mount for the painting in a way, like an extra
terracotta. And then the painting is a photograph by a Dutch artist. It's a still life, and then I had it mounted on steel.
Cool.
And that's the one thing I have in Rome is you can literally find all these wonderful artisans who will make anything for you. And I found a steel worker who was willing to do it.
That's amazing.
So we mounted it on steel. Anyway, just fun.
Really cool.
This is my living room in Chicago. Faces east, so we did a nice warm light. And I have a mix of everything. Mainly, this room is very much lived in. We use the banquettes. I would say we fill this room all the time. It's not a very big house. It was a 19th century townhouse from 1871. that then David Adler lived in during, before his wife died. He lived there for 15 years.
Oh,
He
wow.
didn't really do much in it. He was, as all architects are, he was not, had no money and tried to do a little bit. There's some paneling that we have upstairs. This room was a parlor. And what I did is I took out the walls and we put in structural beams. And then I found these 19th century columns in Atlanta. And
Cool.
we use those columns to divide the room and allow the room to be wider.
Really, really clever.
It's very comfortable.
Okay, and now we've jumped to Tony's slide. So Tony, now your turn to kind of share with us how you bring together all of these different influences from around the world to create harmony.
I'm looking, this house was in the Adirondacks, and I just started a project in the Adirondacks this week. I think that the interesting part about this house was it contains a lot of the collections that this client put together for a very large apartment in New York City.
Oh,
And,
wow.
yeah, so it all moved lock, stock, and barrel to this house in the Adirondacks, and I worked on this part with on this house with Eric Espinoza, my associate, and he was totally turned on by the original work of Diamond and Barada for
Oh,
this house. So it was kind of like it was kind of an interesting project because he was learning about the look and how to take it into a different time period. It was probably done 25 years ago now. Anyway, it is an interesting mix of English furniture, 18th century English furniture next to 19th century English furniture, and then very rustic folk art like the hooked rug above the mantle, and then there's a piece of Delft, and we go down from very expensive high-end antiques to this kind of little kind of weird tool chest that you see on the right-hand side of the picture that was bought at Brimfield. So the Brimfield is like the big flea market in Massachusetts that they hold 3 times a year. So the whole look is a casual look, and I want to stress, and I think that this is like one of the most disappointing things about our decorating today is that the idea of a country house has gone by the wayside. And I think that a lot of people think that you have to do this kind of contemporary look in country houses. And I find it like a drag. If that makes any sense. I mean,
I
it's
love
like,
that. Well, something that I hope you feel this way, but something that I always take away from your work is how the setting influences your decorating.
yes.
And so I like this. You say Adirondacks, and I'm like, oh yes, I get it. I'm there. I'm transported just by looking at this picture.
Thanks.
Okay, turning to an entirely different.
Yeah, talking about this is my house.
I love this
And
house.
this is an interesting thing because as a decorator, I'm sure that Alessandra can attest to this. You really don't want to give away things that you've collected over all these years. It's so hard for me to part with certain pieces. So this is is an amalgamation of lots of different furnishings from lots of different homes. And for my own personal look and my own personal things that I collect, I go from really, really funky mid-century pieces to English pieces, and it's just things that I like. The color is limited in this house just because I don't love living with a lot of color in this particular space.
Well,
So,
you can
go ahead.
see that you're surrounded by nature here.
Yes, yes. Yes, it's a house that was built in the late 70s. It is like the craziest house you've ever seen. And at first I was like, okay, get rid of all your furniture and start new. And I couldn't do it.
I
I
love
just couldn't do it. I had to be around the pieces that I've been collecting for a long time. And just as an aside, Alessandra and I share a very close friend. His name is Scott Sevior, and he always used to invite me to your apartment in Rome. And now I'm so mad that I didn't go.
Oh, it's still there. Unfortunately, it's all alone, but
Oh, well,
it will be there.
someday,
It'll be
someday.
there.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, this is a ski house.
I love
Uh,
this.
this thing is, a mix of lots of different concepts that we've been working on for years. And, I look at this, and the mix of things is very controlled. And I think that the one thing about what I like have been doing for a long time is keeping a focus, even though it's like a lot of different patterns and stuff. I mean, I like when we're bringing different elements into a project, but there's a thread that carries that keeps it contained, or keeps a focus. So that's what we're doing here, and of course it's one of my favorite color combinations, the gray, black, and red.
Is that an antique quilt above the fireplace, or is it something
That's an antique quilt. Um, I love using quilts as artwork because when they're stretched, they have a lot. They're very graphic.
they're
And
so
it's a good way to cover a big wall if
Mm.
you're not spending, $50,000, $60,000 on a piece of art. I've always done this, and I continue to do it. So,
great? Ah, Tony, this is one of my favorites, as you know.
oh well, thank you.
You have to tell
Uh,
us about Williamsburg.
I I had this great opportunity, which ended this spring. I was the designer in residence at Colonial Williamsburg, and with that, I was able to live in this house from 1755. It's called the Palmer House, and with the really really special what was really special is I worked with Benjamin Morty and used their Colonial Williamsburg color line to create this room. So again, this is I think a lot of people sort of get so uptight with the mix of furniture. This house, I basically furnished with things that I've had for many years and had no place for. So there's there's a 19th century settee, an 18th century American wing chair, and Victorian furniture, which I absolutely love. It's become a signature of our look, and I often just throw in a Victorian chair just for its sculptural quality. Also, there's braided rugs used throughout the house, and braided rugs again are a signature. And this one was done for Capel Rugs, the Great American Braided Rug Company. So it's just a big mix. Um, and it's more traditional. And they had originally said to me, "Oh, why can't you use contemporary pieces?" There are some houses that you just can't use contemporary pieces. They make no sense whatsoever in a contemporary environment. I mean, an antique house, that
Really
it's
historic.
very hard for me to use them.
Yeah.
Doesn't do a thing for me. But so that's why I used all of this kind of furniture.
It's really wonderful.
Thank you.
So third of four sort of themes, I'm going to kind of speed us up a little bit, is luxury craftsmanship. I feel like both of you do such a wonderful job almost of keeping some of these lost arts alive. Tony, you just mentioned the braided rug from Capel Rugs. This is something that, you know, has been going on forever. So I wondered if you all could share a few examples from your work where you feel like luxury craftsmanship truly transformed the space. And Tony, this time we're going to start with you.
Again, there's a braided rug up the stairs, and this particular one is from this company in New Hampshire called Country Braid House, which does a lot of our braided rugs. It's a big mix of things by craftsmen. The wallpapers are printed custom for us, and the lanterns are made in England by Charles Edwards. And you're right, we do keep these companies in business. Decorators like Alessandra and I, we feel very, very responsible for keeping the craft alive. And it's only going to, that there's so many people that you're just really concerned about their well-being, because if we don't have this craft, decorating is just not going to be the same as we're used to. So it's important to us.
Yes.
There we go.
This is the same house, and you know, everything is custom in here. And you know, I look at it and I think to myself, like, what else could we possibly do? The mantle is an 18th century American mantle, and then I got it in there. It's like, that's okay. And so we had our decorative painter Pierre Finkelstein, who is the master at faux bois, paint the mantle that I think my client was ready to kill me. It didn't have to be an 18th century mantle to do that. The tiles are made from a company called Solar Tiles, which are, you know what, they're done in Portugal. They're by our design. And
Amazing.
you know, it's kind of like what a decorator is meant to do. You know, that's the important part that I think that's one of the most important parts of my career, is keeping these people in business.
Love that.
This is a house in Los Angeles. This is a dining pavilion on the property, and again, this Solar tile made all of the tiles. The walls are actually tile walls.
Oh, wow.
Done in Portugal. The dining tables are manufactured by a cabinet maker that I've been using since I was 22 years old. And his name is Thomas Newman, and he's in New Jersey, and he's brilliant. I think that every designer has a cabinet maker that they love working with. This particular cabinet maker, along with many others, is totally terrific. And the one last thing I want to talk about is the chairs, which were done by Guido De Angelis, which is probably one of the best upholsterers in the world. He may be the best upholsterer in the world, where all these incredible decorators have done their furniture with De Angelis, and I entrust him to do special pieces like this, because like the fabrics were done by Brunswick and Phoebe, and they're like incredible that they, you know, like, are done with templates on the chairs. So it's kind of a fun way to keep the craft going.
It's incredible.
Thank you. I think it's the last one. This particular house is in Southampton. The table again in the center is not an antique. It is a newly done table.
That's amazing. It
It's
looks like
yeah, it's pretty. It's a very pretty table, and the floor is done by another decorative painter of arts. Her name is Diane Warner, and she is brilliant. The wallpaper is a fabric that's printed for the room, so it's sort of what I like to do when I have the chance. And I think that, it doesn't come often that you are asked to work with all of this custom kind of decorating, but it certainly is a fun way to decorate a house.
I love it. Alessandra?
Ooh.
Oh, sorry, I skipped.
Pretty.
I skipped ahead. Um, for you, for luxury craftsmanship, can you sort of tell us what's going on here? The bedding, the canopy, and the window treatments are just stunning.
Those were influenced by 17th century English interiors. The walls were done by Gracie, but instead of doing a classic wallpaper, I asked them to do a pen and ink drawing and stop
Oh, wow.
through the
Wow.
color on the outside. So it's actually an amazingly detailed, spectacular, beautiful wall.
Wow.
And our wonderful spring green. I love everything in here but that thing in the middle, which drives me crazy when clients want those things. I have to be honest, I still look at that and go, ah! Just because I guess it's a reality. We don't allow televisions in our bedrooms in our house, but clients seem to want that. But the room is really about custom getting, we did the sky in the bed, which is the ceiling, what people call sky in our industry. We actually did it in a wonderful sky blue. So that when you wake up in the morning, you have this beautiful pale blue sky and then spring green walls and all the details. I mean, that's the one thing that Anthony, I think we're losing so many of these wonderful workrooms and amazing artists and artisans and craftspeople. And it's because people want the easy button. They want to push a button, order it online, and never have to deal with it again. And the truth is, the iconic rooms that everyone looks at and all the beauty, when they look at this wasn't, this wasn't machine printed wallpaper. Every panel suits its wall. Every single thing was studied. Every elevation was drawn, scaled, and done properly. The window treatments were scaled and then mocked up in canvas so that we could be sure of the proportions.
Amazing.
The chaise is a chaise that I designed, and it has pull-out tables, and it's updated. The gilding was done by a gilder. The leg was carved by a carver. Those are things, these are the disciplines of our industry. And they are the disciplines that this industry was founded on and for a very long time existed on. Now, unfortunately, if you don't support something, it goes away. It dies. It's like not watering the garden. It just goes. And so I think that's the most difficult thing, is that people need to be interested enough to study, to understand the differences between homes and between products and between quality and non-quality, and not want the quick and easy button of, I fight it every day. The trim was all custom. I mean, it's these people, a number of these people are already out of business. It's so sad.
Heartbreaking. It's really hard.
We did this room in Kips Bay in Palm Beach. The bed was a wonderful 1950s bed. That it was fantastic, the faux bamboo that I had. And then I've been doing a collection with De Gournay in London, and we have done, I've done 4 seasons, and this is my summer introduction.
I love it.
I based it on a Portuguese tiled wall. And in this case, rather than having Solar, who I adore, by the way, do something, I thought, why don't we hand paint the paper? And we glazed it. We actually did a plaster wall and ceiling, and then we we did a shiny paper to reflect as though it were tiles.
Incredible.
The fabric around the bed, we took, the bed didn't have that headboard, so we had a custom headboard made and done on the bed. And then the sheets on the bed are all made for me in Rwanda by survivors of the genocide who are amazing, who I've been working with for a while. And that we included, that's Casablanca, the fabric. Another thing is our fiamma, which is based on a rug at Vaux-le-Vicomte that I am in love with. And I did this sort of modern version of it.
That's so cool.
We cut it out for the balance. And we've done the same on the skirt of a chair. And
Oh, it's so cool.
it's a mix. It's a mix, but it's also, there's something so bright and lively about blue and white. By the way, and Tony, those chandeliers in your room were fantastic. You didn't mention them, but they were amazing. The pole with the gilt detailing. Anyway, this is my bedroom. This is where we upholstered the walls. Another thing that I think people don't seem to do, and they see that I do it, but don't understand it. When you upholster a wall, it becomes very quiet. It's amazing.
I think we're going to see more. I hope we're going to see more of this with more people.
It's really a wonderful feeling, particularly for a bedroom. And then the table skirt I had made, it was all hand cut and hand done. And then we have a trim. We have a scallop loop trim that runs all along the edges. And I've been reading about John Fowler. You know, much of design is to study. Study. And even at my tender age, I still study. And during this whole time, I've been studying about design between World War I and World War II, and World War II and after, and how they were influenced. They too lost many of the artisans and companies that had worked, disappeared, and then they had to innovate. And people like John Fowler, there were limits on what people could buy. And so he would use anything from a napkin and create a window treatment with napkins done in a checkerboard pattern. I mean, it's genius. So it's not a question of just, you have to study and you have to think of what you're working with, and then you have to be creative. And as Tony is amazing, you know, you need to have people like this who can teach you the freedom of one, understanding something and then abstracting from it and being creative with it.
You both do such a great job of, as you said, abstracting. You know, there's a little bit of levity and even spontaneity to it.
Well, this was a little spontaneous.
This one, though, was
one of the most magnificent rooms. It's so complicated and evolved. So let me explain. The client loves Roman and Greek art, and we did this whole house for him. And the stone, we went to the quarries in Italy. We antiqued it to match a 17th century floor. All the architecture was HBRA, which is incredible in Chicago. This was the project of projects. That paper is all gouache. It is hand painted, every inch of it. Taken from Hamilton's vases, which were a wonderful collection of prints that were made of Sir Hamilton's collection of Greek art, which was lost when he transported it from Greece to England. So they had thankfully drawn them. The fixture is by Caldwell with Wedgwood detailing. So it's a 19th century fixture that a collector commissioned of Caldwell and Wedgwood. There's the dishes, many of the dishes we used were Giustiniani, which Giustiniani used to make the during the Grand Tour. They reproduced so well antiquities that they were actually mistakenly bought by numerous museums in the world. And I'd rather buy Giustiniani and know what I'm buying than not be sure. The entire thing is spectacular. We made the light fixtures in the hall out of alabaster, you know, the trim on the banquette in the hall, the chairs. We had a set of 6 incredible Regency chairs, and we had 2 more copies made, or 4 more copies, so that we could fill in the set. The table was custom done with an inlay of Greek key by a company called New Classics, which was spectacular.
I love
even
that
tell
green
you.
inlay.
Everything in this image, it looks so easy. And I think when you really spend time looking, you realize the millwork was all done, and then it was all painted and antiqued. And we painted it with a little bit of plaster in the paint, which is a trick I like to do to give a wall stability. You know, new walls, once you put 2 coats of paint, they kind of don't look like they've been there.
No.
So we throw in a tiny bit of plaster into the paint, and it creates this patterning, and it reflects light differently.
That's amazing. For the interest of time, I think that you all have pretty much already shown us inviting character throughout all of the other themes. And I think I'm gonna race us through these images quickly so that we can, oh, so beautiful. It's hard to do this. So that we can get back to to wrap things up with our fall market spotlight. I've asked each panelist to share with us how he or she might incorporate Jim Thompson's fall launch into an upcoming design. Jim Thompson is highlighting 3 textiles here, Serengeti and Topaz. And now, of course, my screen is blocked. The artisan stripes, bag end stripe, and these beautiful ornamental key tassels. And then, hold on, technical difficulties. The amazing Palampour panel in Tiger Lily. So, how, panelists, would you incorporate these textiles into a project?
Why don't you go first, Alice?
Go for it,
Who's in
baby.
the hot seat first?
Have at it.
The purple or fabric, I think, is actually a beautiful way to start the walls in a room. I think that it's because of the scale of the pattern. It's quite spectacular. It's like a tree of life.
Amazing.
I love, like Alessandra, I love rooms where the walls are upholstered. Again, I think it's a lost kind of art. When I started out, we were still, and probably Alessandra remembers this, there used to be like these stories in the magazines about upholstering walls in sheets. And that is like so like gone now. But anyway, that particular Jim Thompson fabric
I
is
could see
really
a room done in Porto.
right. That would be fantastic. Not so inexpensive.
No.
Alessandra, what are you
Well, I of course love the Palampour and would have upholstered a room in a second. I'd love to do an octagonal breakfast room and do it in the sky blue version, which is, I thought this would be an amazing.
Oh, that was pretty.
I thought this was really fantastic and fun. And then, of course, there's this wonderful tiger sort of pattern, which is actually, I think it's a symbol in, no, it's not tiger, but it looks like it to me.
It is tiger, I think, or it's sort of a version of tiger.
Yes, I believe this is historically, this is something else. It's waves or something.
Okay.
But anyway, I'm sure someone who knows much more could tell us. But what I love about this is I would do this on French chairs in a second, not even think twice. I think that would look fantastic. The stripe to me was also another opportunity. I mean, this would be great on mid-century chairs.
Woo.
Oh, cool.
How does that feel?
Yeah.
The texture is spectacular.
Like
I feel like I'm doing an ad, but I really do love these. They're fantastic. Anyway, the thing is, if you study and learn and see how things are done, you're going to find, you know, there was a wonderful Caliph Alatin is a wonderful 70s designer who would take this, upholster it on a museum quality chair and put it in a white marble floor, white walled room. Look him up. He was a genius.
Amazing.
You can imagine things that look very rich all of a sudden become very easy to live with.
What do you think about this as a jacket for men?
Oh,
I love it.
Like,
or a vest.
I think I would be good in like a Nehru jacket out of this. I think it'd be fabulous.
Maybe this would have to be vertical as a tube top.
Now we just need somewhere to go in our beautiful.
Right.
Oh, we can all sit in our little, my little jail, my outfit.
I love it. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. I hope you all enjoyed it. I'd like to thank our amazing panelists for giving us so much time this morning. I'd like to thank ADAC for hosting us, and of course, Jim Thompson for the beautiful work that they're doing.